Hi there. Welcome to my presentation. My name is David Gaudet, and I come from the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, aka SAIT, who, along with our friends at Bow Valley College, are proud and joyful to be co-hosting CiCan 2024 here in Calgary. I'm here to talk to you about competency-based education. More specifically, what I call the 8 pillar competencies that must be entrenched in our minds in order to make competency-based education even work. We all have these 8 pillar competencies, and somehow we've let them slip away. So I'm going to talk to you about what they are, where they went, and how we get them back. All right, some of the things we're going to include in this little talk are what I call the competency hot potato, this idea that no one really wants to handle this issue. I'll then go over the 8 pillars themselves with an overview and evolution as to how they came about. We'll take a deeper dive into curiosity, my favorite of all competencies. It's the pillar of all pillars, what I call competency-based education's gateway drug. And then I'll share with you some of the things that I've done from my book, which was called The Daily Undoing, Being Better at Being Human, a virtual user manual for these 8 pillar competencies, how I've integrated them into some of my teaching, and how I'm developing courses about that very subject myself. So, what is this competency hot potato? What's a hot potato anyway? English language speakers may recognize the idiom. It sort of stands for something that's so hot you can't handle it. You don't want to handle it, and so you pass it along to someone else. There's an actual definition in the dictionary now. It says, a problem, situation, etc. that is difficult to deal with and causes a lot of disagreement. So what are we disagreeing on here that has to do with competencies? Well, as a college instructor, I know this firsthand that when I talk to people in industry, particularly about business students, the area of study that I teach, I often get comments like, the kids coming out of college today know a lot of the technical skills, but what about problem solving and communication and collaboration? Who's teaching them that? Because that's the kind of thing that I'm really looking for. And then me as an instructor, I kind of think, is that up to me? I don't know if I want to handle this hot potato. Maybe it should have been done by high school teachers or junior high teachers. Like, who's teaching critical thinking and citizenship and problem solving and creativity and curiosity? Of course, high school teachers and junior high school teachers don't want to take the blame for this either. And it's really no one's blame. I think it's a collective share of ownership here. But we all might look back to how these kids grew up, their families, their parents. Like, why weren't they teaching their kids how to be problem solvers and creative people and innovative thinkers and so on? So as you can see, it is sort of like a hot potato. It sort of gets passed along. No one's really taking responsibility for it, but somewhere along the line, it has been lost. So I came to the realization, this is me about 4 years ago when I had no hair, that I was actually part of the problem. I was stamping students through the programming that I was teaching, making sure that they knew how to do things that had to do with business and marketing and accounting and management and so on, without really paying any attention to, these essential human skills, these skills required for being part of the human race and part of a workspace and so on. Now, I called them skills because that is so often what they're referred to. In fact, they're called soft skills. And I hate that sort of description because they're anything but soft. In fact, I think they're kind of the hardest thing to really learn and gain and become really good at. And as we'll discuss, they're not really skills either. They're bigger than skills. But nevertheless, there I was going, I'm part of the problem. So how can I be part of the solution? So I came up with a formula. I shouldn't say I came up with it. It certainly was out there before I took it on, but I kind of thought that these things that no one is paying any attention to, these competencies, were really essential to competency-based education, which at a very high level, a very oversimplification of the term, stands for education that is done more through experience and hands-on than on theory and memorization. And it's gained a lot of traction in North America and around the world. And we'll talk about how that is so and what sort of forces are making a case for it. here we're going to talk about the 8 pillar competencies as an overview. So I've talked about curiosity and how that's, to me, the most important part of the whole solar system of competencies. But so is character, right? Having a moral compass and knowing right from wrong, but acting on right from wrong as well. Collaboration as a competency. This idea of getting along with others, but having a humility to be able to let others take the lead when others need to take the lead. Critical thinking, right? Thinking, making decisions based upon the big picture and taking in all arguments and all considerations rather than just leapfrogging to one side or another. Problem solving. There's complex problem solving, the kind of problem solving that has to do with people and interpersonal skills, and then there's scientific and engineering problems, but it all kind of falls under this idea of having to go through a systematic process of finding the root to a problem and finding out the different types of alternatives and solutions that can be formulated to solve the problem, choosing the problem, and so on. I don't need to explain to you what problem solving is. By citizenship, I'm talking about kind of a personal social responsibility. So we all know that companies nowadays must have some corporate social responsibility, or at least attempt to have some corporate social responsibility. But I chose citizenship here. I inserted citizenship to a list that is rarely covered anywhere else because I thought that individually we must have some sense of social and environmental responsibility as well. Communication speaks for itself, but in my area of thought and the book that I published, it has as much to do with listening as it has to do with speaking and writing. Creativity. This was sort of a multi-stepped version of design thinking. So a lot of sub-steps beneath the design thinking model of empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. But we went deeper into that with creativity. The whole notion of coming up with innovative solutions to people problems. And of course, curiosity. And you know my feeling about that. None of these things are possible without a deep sense and a natural sense of curiosity. So how did I come about these competencies? And before I go there, let's talk about what you see in the middle of this orbiting diagram here. What you see is a Venn diagram with attitude, knowledge, and skill. And competency is sort of meant to follow that pattern. So rather than just being a skill, a competency is this triad of an attitude that embraces learning and is open-minded to learning. And then that open-mindedness to learning leads to the gathering and absorption of knowledge. And then we prove that knowledge by performing a skill. So again, competencies are larger than skills. They're bigger than skills, although we often call them skills. But it's this flywheel of attitude, knowledge, and skills. So I can't take credit for putting together the framework or these competencies. I can only tell you that I became aware that I was part of the problem and I wanted to be a part of the solution. I became aware of that through personal experience. As I mentioned earlier on, I talked to a lot of industry people. I'm connected with industry here in Calgary and across Canada, and I often hear these things about the graduates that are coming into the world. Not just today. This isn't a Gen Z or millennial thing. I think it's been around for a long, long time. But nevertheless, I learned about it first through personal experience. And then I started to do some primary research, like some formal interviews with people in industry and asking them what these coveted yet missing competencies were. And the list started to formulate. I then did some secondary scholarly research, reading up on these things in published papers and articles and so on. And that led me to look at and see what educational institutions and government institutions were doing about this area that seems to be missed. And lo and behold, here in my province of Alberta, there's a competency-based education and learning initiative. And in fact, there is similar in all provinces and territories here in Canada. So where are they? Who's doing these? And when are they being done? And if they're not being done, then why? And why aren't they more prevalent in our education systems? Again, No one wants to hold this hot potato. Finally, the Organization for Economic Cooperative Development, the OECD, put out their Learning Compass 2030 report, which also had, you guessed it, a competency-based education section, with many of these competencies listed as skills required. Pardon the use of skill again, but it's sort of a Freudian slip because we always call them that. But competencies required to live, to learn, to function, to perform, to work with others going forward. So that's my list. That's my system. That's where I got them. And this is how I went about kind of bringing them back. I started a podcast in 2020. Not a great year to begin anything that was going to be going on a daily basis, but COVID and a pandemic certainly lent itself to all of these competencies. We saw examples of needs for all of these competencies, from curiosity to problem solving and everything in between. And my podcast was called The Daily Undoing, and very symbolically it meant let's go about a different kind of habit formation. A habit that would not work out our abs or our biceps or our guitar playing or our cooking skills. And all the habit books are great, Atomic Habits and whatnot are wonderful, and I love them. But I wanted to think about habits in a different way, habits that exercised these competencies on a regular basis. And so I did this podcast every day in 2020. One of these competencies was featured in the podcast, and an action verb was then recommended for listeners of the podcast to go out into their day and perform that action. And again, to realize that this is a competency deep inside them that needed to be taken out and worked out. I went into 2020 with the full knowledge that I was eventually going to publish a book of the same name. And in fact, I was going to be writing the book as the year went along. Each podcast script could literally be taken and made into a workbook at the end of the year. So sure enough, at the end of 2020, early in 2021, I had a book ready to go, and it too was called The Daily Undoing, with the subtitle Being Better at Being Human. With the book out, my job as a marketer and being a marketing teacher, I wouldn't be very good at my teaching subject matter if I didn't practice what I preached. So I amplified the message. I went to media, I went to podcasts, I went to conferences, and spoke and trumpeted from mountaintops about this passion that I had, but this necessity that the world was missing, and certainly we were missing in the educational flow as well, about competencies. So thank you, CBC here in Calgary, and Russell Bowers and his Daybreak Alberta program shared an interview with me. I think I had a couple of other appearances on CBC. I was featured on podcasts all over Calgary and in other parts of the world. And I went talking about this at relevant conferences, such as the Competency-Based Education Network's 2022 conference in Austin, something they call the CBE Exchange. And as you can see in the photo directly above me, that's me with a whole bunch of delegates that got a copy of the book. And I ran them through exercises, the same kind of exercises that are found in the book. I made them do. A lot of them were teachers, a lot of them were administrators, a lot of them were deans and chairs and so on. There were no excuses. Everybody had to go and practice these competencies to see how easy it was to bring them out and to teach them. So from publication to amplification to application. So now I had this workbook. How do I show people how to use it? And as soon as the book was released, of course, Mom and Dad and friends and family were the first to pick it up, but it was really rewarding to start seeing just people that followed me on LinkedIn or Instagram or heard about me through something else pick up a copy of the book and start using it. Seeing people writing in the pages of the book exactly as I had intended was the most rewarding thing. And this is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted all of us to become more aware of these 8 things that we have deep inside of us that we need to bring out and use. And I was starting to draw people. I created a website, which I still have, thedailyundoing.com. I was drawing people to the website by publishing posts in social media saying, aren't you curious about what you're really good at that you haven't been told? And send people to my website where they would see this sharpest competency quiz that people could take. And in order to get the results of what their strongest competency was they, of course, would have to give me their email address so I could then send them emails in the future with updates on where I'm going with this movement. You might have noticed that someone had included a quote from Viktor Frankl on one of the pages of the book in the previous slide. And seeing things like that and really thinking of his book as one of the most important books, one of the most influential books to me during this period, I began to get reflective again. I'm, as you could probably tell, a fairly conscientious person, and I began to think, so here I have put out this book asserting how we all need to be better at being human. It was the subtitle of the book, and we all need to follow these daily practices in order to be better at being human. And yet, how much was I actually practicing this myself? Like, was I really walking the talk? And I started to receive signals. And 2020 was a bad year besides COVID. It was also the year of George Floyd's murder and Black Lives Matter. And one of my students was on social media doing amazing poetry about racial equity in general. And I started to think, how visible am I being about racial equity? I mean, I consider myself, a very equal, very open, non-discriminatory person, but am I really activating that? Am I being visible in that? What would a student of mine think by looking at me and wondering about a guy that puts out a book like this, and is he really enacting the things that he's talking about? So that was one thing. It was also a year where, again, Canada was reminded of its past dealings with our Indigenous people. Without getting into the horrific history of our residential schools, 2020 was a year in which we could not avoid the issue any longer because there were all these burial grounds that were becoming uncovered around Canada, many right close here to Alberta. And some of which included schools that were open while I was alive. So this was something that I could no longer brush off to previous generations in which I was not part of. I had nothing to do with residential schools, but I was alive as they were operating. And again, what am I doing to help right the wrong? I've got a book about it, but book schmuck. Am I activating these things? My family and I go out to the West Coast every year, and that particular summer, the West Coast had a heat wave like never experienced before. And so reminded of environmental issues, climate change. And again, there's plenty of actions in the book about this, but how many of those actions am I doing myself on a regular basis? But probably nothing drove it home stronger than having my daughter literally place my book on a pedestal. Well, okay, it was her bookshelf. So proud of what her dad had done, and thinking to myself, wow, am I an imposter? And I think this was different than imposter syndrome. This was looking into the eyes of your child. And listen, if you're a parent, you'll realize there's never a more honest moment, not even looking in the mirror, than looking into your child's eyes and wanting to be faithful and authentic and honest. And I saw this book up there and I thought, okay, I need to do more. And what do I do? I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. So how can I leverage what I've done here? Yeah, I can be an activist and I can be more vocal about all of these issues and I can practice them all. But what is my craft? What is my field? And how can I leverage that to being better at being human? So the first thing that I decided to do was to wedge it into one of the courses that I was currently teaching called Innovation and Design. It was a good fit for that. And this was one of the actual curiosity activities from the book in which I sent people out into the world to become expert noticers. And this is how one of those activities...
Hi there. This is my design thing. This is my number one assignment. I decided to do it right out front of my house here. I live at 1115 14th Street Northwest. With this nice view of downtown. I was sitting on this step right here, just observing what was going on outside, just out front of my house for the last half hour here. it's really smoky and hazy outside. I feel like probably a lot of different people notice that. It's kind of affecting me a little bit. It's really dry, as you can see. My skin is super dry and flaky, and it's been bothering me all day. It's a really busy street, 14th Street, one of the busiest streets in Calgary. Lots of cars driving by, all different kinds of cars, all different kinds of people in them. Some look happy, some look sad. Some are looking at me like I'm crazy for standing out front here with my phone. Yeah, I kind of wonder about these people a little bit, like what's stressing them out in their lives. I know I feel a little bit stressed today, and I wonder if that's how they feel as well. Just what stresses them out and how they think about things. People seem to be in a hurry for some reason. I don't know, I feel like people are always in a hurry, you know, like they're always trying to get somewhere right now. And maybe if we decided to live in the moment a bit more, maybe we'd be a little bit happier. I don't know. People always seem to be thinking about what's next instead of what's going on right now. And I feel like I think like that quite a bit too. I don't really focus on the moment, focus too much on things that are out of my control. And a way to channel the moment would be like something that I really think I should try to sort out, because it seems like these people are just all, you know, just driving by in a hurry. Yeah, there's a couple, the other things that I kind of noticed too, there's a couple, my neighbor's house and then this house down here, dilapidated and kind of worn down, and I wonder about how these houses got that way, especially this one over here, this house. It's burnt down. I'm curious as to what happened there, you know, how that happened, maybe how it could be prevented, something like that. My neighbor's house too, it seems like they're never home. Like, I don't know what they do, if they have a job. And I wonder, you know, if they have a job, they work this much, do they enjoy that? Do they enjoy all the work they have to do? I know personally I wouldn't enjoy working that much. But yeah, that's... and then just the downtown as well. Obviously, there's a beautiful view outside of my front door here. I took that in quite a bit. Think about just like the sheer amount of people that are down there right now at the same time, all working towards something different. It's kind of almost overwhelming to think of it. But yeah, so that's what I observed here this afternoon out front of my house. And yeah, thank you very much.
I remember him well, a big burly athlete at SAIT, kind of ironically getting in touch with his feelings through one of the activities in the book on curiosity. So that was a way that I could nimbly start putting some of my thoughts of what I consider to be very important into the craft that I do for a living. And that was in an exercise called Design Think.
Hi there, this is my Design Think number 1 assignment. I decided to do it right out front of my house here. I live at 1115 14th Street Northwest. With this nice view of downtown. I was sitting on this step right here, just observing what was going on outside, just out front of my house for the last half hour here. It was really smoky and hazy outside. I feel like probably a lot of different people notice that. It's kind of affecting me a little bit. It's really dry, as you can see. My skin is super dry and flaky, and it's been bothering me all day. It's a really busy street, 14th Street, one of the busiest streets in Calgary. Lots of cars driving by, all different kinds of cars, all different kinds of people in them. Some look happy, some look sad. Some are looking at me like I'm crazy for standing out front here with my phone. Yeah, I kind of wonder about these people a little bit, like what's stressing them out in their lives. I know I feel a little bit stressed today, and I wonder if that's how they feel as well. just what stresses them out and how they think about things. People seem to be in a hurry for some reason. I don't know. I feel like people are always in a hurry. You know, like they're always trying to get somewhere right now. And maybe if we decided to live in the moment a bit more, maybe we'd be a little bit happier. I don't know. People always seem to be thinking about what's next instead of what's going on right now. And I think like that quite a bit too. I don't really focus on the moment, focus too much on things that are out of my control. And a way to channel the moment would be like something that I really think I should try to sort out, because it seems like these people are just all, just driving by in a hurry. Yeah, there's a couple. The other things that I kind of noticed too. There's a couple. My neighbor's house, and then this house down here, dilapidated and kind of worn down. And I wonder about how these houses got that way. Especially this one over here. This house, it's burnt down. I'm curious as to what happened there. How that happened, maybe how it could be prevented, something like that. My neighbor's house too. My neighbors, it seems like they're never home. Like, I don't know what they do, if they have a job. And I wonder, if they have a job, they work this much, do they enjoy that? Do they enjoy all the work they have to do? I know personally I wouldn't enjoy working that much. But yeah, that's and then just the downtown as well. Obviously, there's a beautiful view outside of my front door here. I took that in quite a bit. Think about I really just like the sheer amount of people that are down there right now at the same time, all working towards something different. It's kind of almost overwhelming to think of it. But yeah, so that's what I observed here this afternoon out front of my house. And yeah, thank you very much.
So that was great, being able to nimbly insert something that I had put together myself into a course that I designed and taught, sort of having full control over. But I wanted to spread it further. I wanted to cast the net wider. And I was able to develop a program for Medicine Hat College, you can see here, made up of, I think, 8 different modules. And one of the courses was called Creativity and Changing Perspectives. And one of the modules in that course, as you can see here, was called Creativity and Critical Thinking, 2 of my pillar competencies. So again, my thought here was that I had to spread this line of thinking further. And for anyone that was allowing me through the door, I was definitely going to walk through. And this is what one of those courses looked like. Some of the activities from that course included, again, literal pages from the book and having students do these activities for grades. So again, kind of this progression of kind of impromptu insertion of my material into an existing course to actually developing courses in which these 8 pillar competencies became quite an essential and integral part of them. The most recent thing that I've been working on is creating my own courses for the Daily Undoing. And as I make this video, which is early April 2024, I'm hoping to have the first of these courses published on my website. Basically using a course that I had developed and used at Inception U here in Calgary, which is one of the most fabulous alternative ways of doing education in post-secondary. And you can understand why Inception U and myself would kind of make a good fit, because they're supreme undoers of the way things are done. So I taught this course and I designed this Daily Undoing course and delivered it to them a couple of years ago, and I think it went off quite well. And I wanted to do a virtual and online version of it. So as I said, at the time I'm recording this, it's sort of in the mid stages of production, but I hope to have it up and running within the next few weeks or a month or so. And as you can see, it's called 8 Habits of Highly Competent Humans. I don't need to go very far to find fairly authoritative support of some of these competencies, specifically the one that I've already referred to as my favorite, the gateway drug to competency-based education, then Einstein himself, whose famous quote went something like, "Look, there's nothing special about me. I have no particular talent. I just happen to be passionately curious." And this is what I'm trying to drive out from the Daily Undoing, from these 8-pillar competencies. But not just curiosity. I want us to be passionate about citizenship and character and communication, the whole 8 set of them. Being passionate about being better at being human. Now, this is an exercise that I had a conference group do. I think it was the one that I went to for Competency-Based Education Network. I had the participants in that group go out and perform this activity, but you can kind of see here what a page in the book looks like. It had the competency and an insight about the competency at the top of the page, and then it was followed by an action that would help you bring out this competency, that would help you get some reps in on this competency. And then obviously to the right, which fell in the lower half of the page, was this constant reminder that you're not just developing a skill here, you're developing a competency of attitude, knowledge, and skill. One of the mantras of competency-based education is that we never reach mastery of competencies. We're always improving. We're always looking for a better way to make ourselves better at being human. So I always wanted to stress, and I wrote this in the introductory pages of my book, that if you're thinking that you're ever going to be perfect at these things, think again. This is part of being human. In fact, one of my reviewers, a lady in Pennsylvania, who happened to be a chief science officer at a pharmaceutical company, and bought the book, and I met her on a virtual meeting that I had with a group of entrepreneurs in the States. And she was so obsessed with the book that she was actually literally using it exactly as it was designed, which was kind of novel. She was like 3 months into the thing, and I asked to speak with her sort of one-on-one, and I said, why? Like, you're so busy and you're so successful, and you seem like a person that yeah, we can all be better at these things, but you already seem pretty good. And she said these words that I've never forgotten. She said, part of being human is improving. And I think I've featured that on my website. It spoke to me. If there was ever a subtitle other than being better at being human, I think this would be it. It's our job. I mean, we're born to improve and to make life better for those around us. And I would like to chat with you about this. I would like to, being that this is a recorded presentation, we don't have a discussion now and here, but I would love to have one with you at a future time. So here's all my contact information. My website is dailyundoing.com. Email is dgaudet@dailyundoing.com. My SAIT email address was at the beginning of this presentation. It's simply david.gaudet, Gaudet, @sait.ca. I'm active on LinkedIn at David Gaudet. I was very active during the making and marketing of my book on Instagram at Daily Undoing. Not very active on X, but I'm there. And, if you're interested enough to pick up the book, I would, of course, be deeply grateful for that, but would be totally stoked on having a conversation with you about your thoughts on that. Again, my courses are coming down the pike as well. I hope to have that done soon. But whether you pick up a book, take a course, email me, visit my whether or not you do any of these things, although I would sincerely like to speak with you. I hope that you found some value in this, and at the very least, start thinking about how you're doing yourself with these things deep within you, and if it's possible to bring them out and get a few reps in on a daily basis. I know it's helped me. On that note, thank you so much for watching, for hanging out with me for the last half hour. It's been my pleasure, and I'm wishing you a happy conference and a wonderful remainder of 2024. So long.